You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Episode number 126 of the Show Before the Show podcast is the first episode of the postseason in the 2017 minor league baseball campaign, and we're here to take you through it. Hi, everybody. I'm Tyler Munn, Sam Dykstra in New York City. We'll get to hang out next week, Sam. I'm coming there.
Yeah, no, that'll be a lot of fun. You haven't told people where you are right now, though.
Currently sitting in a hotel.
I'm in, not that minutia.
Oh, not specifically. I'm in a chair. No, I am in Thunder Bay, Ontario. That's in Canada, people. Which is the site of the 2017 U18 Baseball World Cup from the World Baseball Softball Confederation, which is basically FIFA for baseball. It's kind of how I always explain it to people. And yeah, the 2017 U18 World Cup, I'm doing the broadcasts for WBSC, myself and the former voice of the Helena Brewers, Craig Durham, who is our other broadcaster here. And we are in the middle of this tournament. We just finished the opening round yesterday. Second round, which is called the Super Round here, is tomorrow, starting tomorrow. USA Baseball, which is a roster of all these teams are 20 guys. It's basically 20 future major leaguers is how it stacks up right now for the U.S. 5-0 through opening round play. They're the top seed coming out of their group going into the Super Round. So it's a 6-team second round, which will determine the two teams that'll play for the gold medal coming up on Sunday. The U.S. has won 3 straight world championships in this event, and their roster is loaded. I mean, guys who are more than likely going to be all of the top 10 high school draft selections or thereabouts next year in the 2018 Major League Baseball first-year player draft. But Ethan Hankins, the catcher, Bryce Turing, the shortstop, Tristan Cassis, the first baseman. I mean, just dudes after dudes after dudes. And this is a fun team. It's a fun competition, and you can find the games. You can watch them online at YouTube and at Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to get a jump on your fantasy drafts for post-2018 Major League Baseball draft, then check us out. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and has there been anybody, any of the big names that are there? Lord knows we've talked to plenty of draft picks the last 2-3 years. Guys talking about how international competition kind of prepares them for the rigors of pro ball. But anybody standing out to you, particularly from that U.S. or any other team that you've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, this U.S. pitching staff right now is absurd. And we knew that this was really going to be a strength of the United States coming into this tournament. And yeah, I mean, we've talked to guys on this show in episodes past in which, Mickey Moniak was a member of this team 2 years ago when they won the World Championship in Osaka, Japan. They've beaten Japan for the gold in each of the last 2 editions of this tournament. But USA Baseball coming into the day today, I'm pretty sure the USA Baseball team staff ERA is, just found the number, 0.22. 0.22 over 5 games. They've given up 2 runs. One of them has been earned in 41 innings pitched. 2 runs. That entire staff, I mean, everybody on that staff has been really impressive. Cole Wilcox got a start. He's thrown 8 shutout innings so far, did give up the 1 unearned run. Ryan Weathers was really impressive. You might remember his father, David Weathers, who was a longtime major leaguer. Ryan Weathers, a high school prospect out of Tennessee. He's been really good. Landon Marcel was one of the top starters for this U.S. team. He started against Japan, 1 inning, then a rain delay. Couldn't come back after a 90-minute rain delay, so Ryan Weathers took the ball and then went 7 shutout innings behind him. But Matthew Liberatore has been fantastic. Marceau was really good. He came on in relief later on in this tournament. Ethan Hankins in his start, 6 innings, 13 strikeouts in his first outing. So if you like pitching, this is certainly the place. And I've been really impressed with the catchers on this roster too, Anthony Siegler and Will Banfield. Offensively, they haven't been tremendous so far, but they've been really fun to watch behind the plate. Tristan Cassis is a fantastic power prospect, a name that you've probably heard. Nolan Gorman, third baseman, who won the high school home run derby ahead of the All-Star game this year in Miami. A lot of fun talent on this team. So you really can't go wrong. It's going to be a whole lot of guys that you either hear about in the early picks in the draft next year or you hear about at high-level D1 programs coming up very soon if you're a college baseball fan as well. So keep an eye out. And there's future stars internationally as well. Japan's got a first baseman who the media over there has dubbed the Japanese Babe Ruth. He hit 109 home runs over the course of his high school career, hit a monster shot yesterday. There is a prospect for Italy who just signed with the Cincinnati Reds named Anthony Seminati, who has, and I find this hard to believe, but I've now read multiple scouting reports that give him an 80 grade in raw power, which is like, that's Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, that type of freakish power. And he's
Joey
hit
Gallo.
Joey Gallo power, exactly. He's hit 2 home runs in this competition that you would not believe. So there's a lot of really fun talent here, and it's pretty cool to see these guys early on, and then a few years from now go, oh yeah, I remember those guys doing X, Y, and Z in these international tournaments. So seek it out. WBSC, the YouTube and Facebook pages are where you can find these games. We open play in the second round coming up on Thursday. Gold medal game is Sunday from Canada.
Yeah,
So
no,
there.
very cool. It's been a lot of fun to just follow you. I know yesterday you called, what, 3 games? It was like 8.5 hours of baseball.
Yeah, and solo. Craig was over at our other. We're doing it at 2 ballparks. Craig was at the other one. I was supposed to have the morning game and the afternoon game. We also have a night game, but Japan and Korea have played early games because they're carried on live television back home. So 9 a.m. here, I believe, is 8 p.m. in Tokyo, I want to say. So Japan's been playing a lot of these early games. So I had the morning game, and in the middle of the morning game, they told me, oh, by the way, we're picking up the Canada-Australia game tonight, which was a 6:30 first pitch, because that had big implications for who was going to come out of Group A. And a big crowd in the house since we're in Canada. And yeah, so yesterday was from basically 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I was calling baseball games solo for 8 hours and 37 minutes. So if there's anybody out there who watched all 3 of those, I am so dearly sorry.
No, happy.
That you
happy.
had to deal with that.
That
It's
means that's a
terrible.
dedicated Tyler Mon fan, of which there are several.
It also sounds like my voice today, I think, also sounds like I smoked like 5 packs of cigarettes before we got on for this show. So it's probably a reason behind that as well.
I just imagine you drinking like tea and honey, all that.
That is,
kinda-
I've literally done that like for the majority of the day today. I've had whatever the Pico orange tea is what they have at this hotel, and a bunch of honey. So
There you go.
It's been fun. But no, it's been awesome, and that leads us into this episode, which is our first postseason episode of the show before the show. 3 Strikes coming up here momentarily. You can find us, by the way, at iTunes, at Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, on the Stitcher app, and wherever else you get your podcasts, and also at milb.com/podcast, and there. Give us a rating and a review and a subscription on iTunes and Google Play, and that helps us out and helps you out. Feel good doing a good deed for somebody. So let's get started. 3 Strikes 2017 has wrapped up at the regular season side. Playoffs beginning all across the minor leagues. We have already some results from early playoff games and series. We did have one big news item, which is that due to Hurricane Irma, the Florida State League has canceled its finals. So the Florida State League will award co-champions to its 2 semifinal winners. We'll talk about that a little bit. But Sam, with the 2017 regular season behind us, what stands out to you most? It seems like every year kind of has a thing that makes its identity. For 2017, what are your biggest takeaways from this year?
I think kind of the way I'm going to remember this year is just the year kind of the teenager, I think, in a way that, every year there's somebody who's performing better than we could have expected at a level that they weren't supposed to be at for their age and that kind of thing. And it always astonishes us. And that's kind of what establishes what we consider to be, top level talent, is guys who kind of exceed their competitive level. But this year, it just seemed like there were so many teenagers who performed so well at, places that, we knew their skill level. We knew what they were. I'm going to start out by talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Him and Bo Bichette were kind of, I don't know who's Batman. I don't know who's Robin. It probably depended on the day. But, the way those 2 guys performed, Bichette being 19, Guerrero being 18, they climbed to high A, the Florida State League. Almost did as well there. Guerrero actually did better in the Florida State League than he did in the Midwest League with Lansing. And, Guerrero just seemed so advanced beyond his years in terms of the way he, took pitches. Everybody likes to talk about his dad and how he was a free swinger, but he had really good hand-eye coordination so he could make up for it. Vlad Jr. walked 76 times this year, struck out only 62. That's incredible for any age, but for an 18-year-old to do that at 2 full season levels is astonishing.
So you got a lot of power too.
Right. Yeah. He hit 13 home runs this year. Again, as an 18-year-old, like he should be a high school senior if he was an American player. And Bichette, one of my favorite things about Bichette was when he left Class A Lansing, he was the Midwest League leader in average, which he was hitting 384 when he left. And the way Rule 922A works, for those of you who are not up to date on your minor league stats rules, 922A basically works out that if a player did not get enough at bats to qualify for a specific slash category, so on base, slugging, average, OPS, they're technically declared the leader in that category if they would still lead the league if they went 0 for the remaining at bats. So I think Bo Bichette needed 64 at bats to technically qualify for the Midwest League lead in batting average. Because he hit 384, he could go 0 for 64 and still lead the league in average. That's insane. That's just so insane. And again, this was a guy who is 19 years old, was a second-round pick last year, 66th overall pick, so 65 teams passed on him before the Blue Jays took him. Just the fact that both of those guys are in the same system is really cool. But it's not just them. Fernando Tatis Jr., another guy who was 18, he got the jump to Double-A San Antonio. I don't know if we talked about that on the podcast or not, but that's kind of fun to think about. I think we actually did. He hit 281 with 21 homers and 29 steals at Class A Fort Wayne. He's another teenager, probably the one who's the standout teenager. If we're not talking about Guerrero Bichette, is Ronald Acuna, excuse me. He's number 7 overall right now. I think he's definitely going to be in the conversation for top overall prospect. Another guy who just got better at every single level he played this year. He finished his slash line at AAA Gwinnett. Again, only 19 years old. This guy was born in 1997. His slash line at AAA Gwinnett was 344. 393, 548 with 9 homers and 11 steals. This is a guy who started at the Class A advanced level at Florida State League, where he hit only 287. So he continued to get better everywhere he went. He might still end up, with the Braves this month. There's been a lot of chatter going on with that. He's definitely going to be heading to the Arizona Fall League. So those are just 4 teenagers, but I feel like they just so dominated the conversation in 2017 that I think that's the way we're going to kind of remember it. And there are, plenty of others, Colby Allard and Mike Soroka, also, teenagers this year, for most of the year anyway, who got pushed to Double-A Mississippi, had solid seasons there. We can keep going on. And I will be really interested to see going forward if this affects, the way teams look at prospects, if they're more willing to push them and get them aggressive assignments, if they are that talented, even when they are that young as teenagers, or if this is just a special group of players. I mean, a couple of years ago, we talked about the year of the prospect and how we thought maybe that'll have implications down the line and guys getting pushed to the majors quicker than we previously thought, just because we've seen them dominate the major league level like they did, and I think that was 2015. Not quite. Yeah, the years following, it's kind of gone back to life as normal when it comes to that. So I don't know if this is just one group of guys who are exceptionally talented. We know they're exceptionally talented. Does that say something about the game currently, or just them? We'll have to wait years before we kind of see that take hold. But yeah, this group was kind of special when it came to 17, 18, 19-year-olds in 2017.
Not only a lot of young guys, but also, as we talked about a couple of months ago, you look at the top 100 prospects in all of minor league baseball, according to MLB Pipeline, not a single pitcher ranks in the top 100. So if you are in the top 10, rather, of the top 100. So if you are a prospect fan on the position player side, that top 10 is loaded for you. Michael Kopech of the Chicago White Sox is number 11, and he is the highest ranked pitching prospect in the top 100 coming toward the end of the 2017 season. Strike 2 this week, Sam. Postseasons are here. They are underway. Like we noted, Florida State League, a big wrench thrown into that, and we obviously, all of our thoughts are with the people on the Atlantic coast who will be impacted by Hurricane Irma. But for the postseason in 2017, there's a lot of storylines from all over the minor league landscape. What stands out to you about the 2017 playoff race that has now culminated in all these series?
Yeah, and one news that's kind of breaking as we're talking about this, I believe the Southern League has also canceled its finals. So Hurricane Irma, is really, we're thinking about everybody in the Caribbean right now, not just affected games wise, but in terms of Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, everybody in Florida. I know the Gulf Coast League. They moved up Game 3 of their finals today, Wednesday, when we're recording this, to 10 a.m. because they wanted to get their players out. So, there might be more news breaking in terms of games being moved or canceled all entirely, what have you. So keep an eye out for that. But the one group I had circled as particularly exciting for me is out on the West Coast in the Pacific Coast League. Just in terms of team storylines, I know we usually tend toward prospect storylines or player storylines, that kind of thing. But the PCL is just kind of stacked with team storylines. You have the defending PCL champs in the El Paso Chihuahuas. They've now won their division 3 times in a row. And not only that, they're getting kind of a ringer, I feel like. I understand it, but he just feels like a ringer. Hunter Renfroe, who was the PCL MVP last year, he's back with El Paso. Didn't have quite the year the Padres were kind of hoping for out of him. And so they sent him back to El Paso at the end of August. Since he's been in El Paso in the PCL as of right now, he's 28 for 55 with 4 homers in 14 games. That's a .509 average over 14 games. He's been the PCL Player of the Week each of the last 2 weeks. So it must feel like getting back on a bike for him, just dominating the PCL. Like, he's back. He knows what he's doing. He can handle this. I'm sure it's getting his confidence back up. Padres aren't really going anywhere this September. They'd rather see him, continue to crush the ball, come back second half of the month, continue. So Chihuahua's kind of going after a repeat title in that league. The fact that they have their best slugger from a year ago back and equally as hot is kind of fun and exciting. But Colorado Springs, I think they won their first division title in 20 years, which is fascinating. That team, it was once really loaded with prospects. Lewis Brinson, Brett Phillips, Josh Hader was on that team at the beginning of the year. Mauricio Dubon is still there.
Brandon Woodruff was there.
Brandon Woodruff was there, yeah. The Brewers actually need help now, so they're calling up all these big names that help get the Sky Sox to where they are now. But that would be really interesting to see them kind of carry it off. And also, the other 2 teams also have their own really impressive prospects. Reno has Christian Walker, probably the best hitter in the PCL this year, was right involved in that Joe Bauman home run award to the very end until A.J. Reed ended up taking it. On the Memphis side, Tyler O'Neill, who was involved in that trade for Marco Gonzalez, straight up from the Mariners, he's moved to the Memphis Redbirds. Cardinals are kind of in a similar position to the Brewers. They're both chasing, that wild card spot. It's kind of all hands on deck. So some of the big names, in that Cardinal system that might otherwise have been with Memphis. I'm thinking about like Harrison Bader, Jack Flaherty is now up. Carson Kelly, you could even make an argument should maybe be still with Memphis. Those guys are up, but Tyler O'Neill is there. Magneuris Sierra is there. So you've got a little bit of power, a little bit of speed in that outfield. No matter what PCL team, I think there's something to be excited about. There's only 4 that make it, so it's a semifinals and the finals, and then whoever wins plays in the AAA National Championship game in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. I think you can't go wrong with trying to follow either one of those 2 series, coming up in the PCL playoffs.
Postseason time, one of the most entertaining times across the minor league baseball landscape, and this year, sure to be no different. But yeah, it is official. The Southern League will cancel its championship series as well. So the FSL and the Southern League, with the playoff plan thrown off track due to Hurricane Irma, but that was officially announced just a little bit ago by the AA Southern League. The month of September, Sam, for Strike 3 is strange for playoff races, and just what you noted about Colorado Springs, for example. Major league teams that are still in the hunt sometimes will have to raid those minor league rosters for guys who can contribute in September. which leaves the minor league teams looking a little bit different as they head into the postseason. But that's the point of all of this, is to graduate those guys to the big leagues and have them making impacts, whether it's in a postseason race now or getting some experience to hopefully do that down the road in their careers. We've seen a bunch of guys promoted for the start of September when rosters expanded on September 1st. Who stands out to you right now as the most notable debut this month?
Yeah, let me just rattle off some of the names that I think got called up in not surprising ways, but we're definitely on that fence of like, well, we'll see. You know, it would make sense if they do get called up, don't get called up, whatever. These are guys who have officially been called up to the majors this month that we're right about on that fence. So J.P. Crawford, who I'm actually going to talk about here in a little bit, Luis Gohara with the Braves, Austin Hayes with the Orioles. That was a little bit surprising just because he started the year at Class A Advanced Frederick, split his time between Frederick and Bowie, and then the Orioles decided to push him. Best hitter in that system. So why the heck not bring him up? But he was the third-round pick last year. That's an awfully aggressive assignment for him, but he certainly earned it. Alex Verdugo moves up to the Dodgers. Jack Flaherty, who I mentioned now with the Cardinals. Chance Sisco, another Orioles prospect, gets moved up to the Orioles. Catcher of the future. Don't know how much playing time he's actually going to get. Wellington Castillo is kind of setting the world on fire as the Orioles catcher. He's only on a one-year deal, so Sisco remains kind of the backstop of the future, but he'll get that time now. And Francisco Mejia, who, as we discussed, will move to third base in the Arizona Fall League. Got a little bit of third base time with Akron, but is now up with the Indians as a catcher. We'll be fascinated with him. But the one that's most intriguing to me is, I think, Crawford, just because the way his season began, this did not seem like a possibility. We knew him to be one of the best prospects in the game, really, to begin the year. That's what everybody thought. He had some struggles last year at AAA Lehigh Valley, but the pieces were still there. He's a guy who's going to take his walks. He's a magnificent defensive shortstop. Everything was there to kind of be a very good player at the major league level. And then he just was not a very good hitter over the first half. Going into June 20th, and I bring up June 20th because that was the day he came back from the DL. He had a disabled list stint with a groin injury. So before he came back from that DL stint, he was batting 194 with a 313 on base percentage and a 252 slugging with just 2 homers in his first 56 games with the Iron Pigs. Since coming back from the DL, we talked about how he got hot in July and how he got hot in August. So this is even including a little bit of before he got super hot. But since coming back from that DL stint on June 20th, he hit 280 with a 380 on base percentage. And this is what it really gets me, was a 522 slugging and 13 homers in 71 games. Power's never really been a huge thing for him. You look at him, you can see why. He's not, a big, rough guy. That's what makes him good at shortstop. He's certainly agile. He's certainly, he's not very big for the position, all that kind of stuff. But certainly turned on the power in the second half for the Iron Pigs. And because of that, I would definitely say he earned this promotion. They moved him around a little bit. He got his first major league start the other night at third base. He got some time, I think, with the Iron Pigs at second base. The Phillies kind of have a tacked on shortstop right now, but that's his future position. He's too good of a defender to not play shortstop. But it's just telling to me because which is the real J.P. Crawford? You talk to him, he just said, well, this is me. This is who I've always been. A lot of people were hating on me in the beginning of the year, and I used that as fuel to get better and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't sound like he really tried to change that much. But he took off in the second half in a way that we always thought he was capable of before his struggles. So now what does he do with this major league assignment? This is an audition. He is playing for 1 month to be the Phillies starting shortstop next year. What is he going to do with it? Is he going to be able to carry that offense with him? And, the Phillies, I think they really want to be a competing club next year. Reese Hoskins is now up there. Jorge Alfaro is now up there. Scott Kingery's not very far behind. They have some of their other big prospects are probably years away in Sixto Sanchez and Mickey Moniak. So they can't really afford to say like, oh, we'll just wait it out one more year. Everybody's knocking on the door now. So, they want Crawford to not exactly do what Rhys Hoskins has done. That's been historic, but at least be as successful. And this next month is going to be very telling in what I think the Phillies are going to try to do this offseason in terms of how ready they think they are to compete and how they kind of prepare for 2018, 2019 with some of the moves they make. So I'll be keeping an eye on that one. It's not going to be affecting Major League postseason, that kind of thing, making some of the impacts, some of those other names I said before, but that'll be very telling for a team that has kind of been waiting for the rebuild to kind of pop off. And I think with Crawford, that's your sign that it's kind of completing itself.
One guy who will be, guy we talked about all year, is more than likely at some point being a call-up candidate is Walker Buehler of the Los Angeles Dodgers, who just announced he will wear number 64 in the Major League. So that's official news, as Walker Buehler will try to push a historic run from the Los Angeles Dodgers through the postseason. One foul ball this week, Sam. We had a big waiver trade deadline deal. A lot of action at the waiver trade deadline this year, which was really interesting. But Justin Verlander moving to the Houston Astros in exchange for 3 prospects: right-hander Franklin Perez, outfielder Daz Cameron, and catcher Jake Rogers. Then with the Astros ranked number 3, number 9, and number 11, respectively. Since moving over to the Tigers, Perez is now the top-ranked prospect in that system. Daz Cameron is number 6, and Jake Rogers is number 8. Give us your take on this deal. Obviously, the Astros making that push for a World Series. You're going to have to deal away a lot of talent in order to get somebody like Verlander, but this is a pretty good package for the Tigers in a system that has been down but gets an infusion of life with this deal.
Yeah, and I mean, I already liked the Tigers pitching. I think that was certainly what was kind of dragging the system up. And by adding Perez, I was talking before about young teenagers performing really well. Perez is only 19, and he was with Double-A Corpus Christi at the time of the deal, and certainly handling his own there with a 3.09 ERA in 32 innings. He becomes their top prospect. He's got 3 above average pitches in his fastball, curveball, and changeup. He's got some pretty good control as well. Lots to like with him. The thing I find really interesting is Daz Cameron. He was kind of tied in the same way Bo Bichette is tied to Vlad Guerrero Jr. Daz Cameron was kind of tied to Kyle Tucker when they were both drafted in the first round of 2015. Cameron, everybody talked about how he was asking for a big signing bonus, and he got one with a $4 million bonus as the 37th overall pick, and the Astros were able to kind of play the system and make that work and all that kind of stuff. But he really struggled his first 2 full seasons, or this being his second full season. The first half of the season, it looked like he was struggling again. Last year, he was actually sent down to short season ball. This year, beginning at Quad Cities, before the All-Star break, he hit just 206 with the 661 OPS. And in the second half, it looked like things were finally clicking. He was batting .332 with a 958 OPS. He's got some good power for his age. 14 homers this year at Class A between Quad Cities and West Michigan. Tons of speed, 32 steals. Is a capable outfielder wherever he's going to play, whether that's in center field, one of the corners, certainly be able to handle that because of that speed. So he went from a guy I think a lot of people were down on to all of a sudden the number 2 trade chip for a former Cy Young winner and former MVP. So how he kind of continues to build himself will be interesting. But yeah, between getting him, Rogers, and I think Perez, who is now the crown jewel of that rebuilding Tiger system, this is definitely a better group of prospects than it was just a couple months ago.
So that'll do it for 3 Strikes on this week's edition of the Show Before the Show podcast. Coming up, we're going to keep it at MILB.com centric this week and hear from Andrew Battifarano, who is one of our terrific writers on the site, a story that he put together on Jake Diekman, who was a member of the Texas Rangers minor league system this year on his way back to the big leagues. He has since reascended to that role, and some stuff off the field that kept Jake off the field over the last year or so in his baseball career. Really cool story, and Andrew joins us to talk about it coming up next. We're keeping it in the MILB.com family here on this week's edition of the Show Before the Show podcast, episode number 126. And Andrew Battifarano joins us to talk about a really, really good piece he had up on the site this week. Welcome, man. Your maiden voyage on the podcast. How are you?
It's good to be here. Yeah, it's first time I've been on here, long time listener, I guess first time caller, and excited to discuss the story with you guys.
And one of our rare guests that we actually also get on Skype, so this audio quality is fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, I'm used to doing this. So I do my own podcast on the side, and we do Skype. So this is, pretty normal.
We're cooking with gas here. Well, let's talk about this story. Andrew wrote a piece on Jake Diekman, who is back in the minor league system in the Texas Rangers organization. I don't want to call him a former big leaguer because he's working his way back to the major leagues for the Rangers, a former prospect in draft selection of the Philadelphia Phillies. Jake's story would be interesting enough if it was just that he was from a town of just under 1,500 people in south central Nebraska, and he was a 30th round draft pick, and he had made the major leagues. But Jake has overcome over the last calendar year and dating back even to his childhood a whole lot more than that. Set up this story for us, Andrew, and how you came across it and putting this piece together.
So for me, I was actually in the hospital. This was in the end of May. So it was actually when I just first started MILB. So it was pretty crazy. And after surgery that I had, I was kind of perusing social media on my phone, and I, stumbled upon Jake, and I knew that he had gone through a lot over the last couple months with his own surgeries and his battle with ulcerative colitis. But when it hit me, it's like, one of the surgeries that he had is very similar to what I just went through. So I kind of reached out through him on Twitter. We had a short conversation, and months kind of went along, and he finally made his first rehab appearance with Frisco a couple weeks ago in August. And one of our editors at MILB reached out to me on one of my days off, and she's like, "Hey, why don't you write a feature about Jake Diekman?" I'm like, "I didn't think about it, but that'd be a really cool idea." And finally came through, and it talked with him, his fiance Amanda, who was great, and people at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. So it really just kind of evolved into this whole thing.
And what was that conversation like with him? I mean, I imagine it's different where, if Tyler or I were talking to him and talking about UC and stuff like that, we would need him to explain what it is. Were you guys able to have like a conversation beyond just, so what are your symptoms and how did you discover this? I mean, how are you able to kind of touch base with him in a way you're not normally used to, speaking to athletes who are throwing 95 miles an hour, can hit a ball 400 feet?
Yeah, it definitely made it a more personal connection where we were able to, kind of talk about the symptoms a little bit more in depth because, we've kind of gone through a lot of the same stuff, even though he is a little bit older than I am. So, yeah, like you said, normally these guys, like, they're throwing, like you said, like throwing 95 miles an hour or whatever, and it's kind of hard to be on that same level. But, to have someone that's gone through just, very similar situations, it made it a lot easier. And we were talking about just, the different medications that we've been on and like what worked and what didn't. And, just kind of the whole process of recovering from this surgeries that, he's been through and the one that I went through earlier this year. And he was just, telling me about like the first meal that he had after the first surgery. It was just a couple of bites of mashed potatoes, but it felt awesome. Like I can totally relate. The first solid meal I had after surgery was like a piece of French toast that the hospital gave me, and I thought it was the greatest thing of all time. And I had it the same thing like the day I left the hospital, and I'm like, God, this is awful. How did I enjoy this so much? But it's just, it's the first thing that you eat. Anything is going to taste good. So, we kind of related in that sense.
Andrew, for those people who are not aware, explain ulcerative colitis to us. It's somewhat similar to Crohn's disease, which more people have heard of, but kind of give us the background and how you guys both came across it. You explain in the story how Jake really experienced symptoms dating back to when he was in elementary school, and I would think there was probably some crossover in how you experienced things and Jake did growing up, but give us that background.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the main difference between Crohn's and colitis is Crohn's can really affect anywhere throughout the GI tract, usually in the small intestines, but it really can be anywhere from, your esophagus all the way down. Colitis is mostly focused in your colon. That's pretty much just where it's centered, but the symptoms end up being, very, very similar. And it's obviously bathroom focused. So, it's a little bit embarrassing, but, growing up with it, I was 12 when I was diagnosed. So I was in 7th grade. And, it was definitely difficult at first because, you just got to get like comfortable with what it is. And it's obviously something that's really uncomfortable.
And at 12 years old, that's already the most difficult time of growing up anyway.
Right. Middle of 7th grade, and this is when like honors classes were starting. So it was definitely, a stressful time in my life. And he was a little bit younger. And what's interesting, I was pretty familiar with Crohn's and colitis by the time I had it because my brother also has it. And he found out when he was about 7 or 8. He was really young. He was in, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade. And so I had been, kind of familiar with the whole process. And by the time I started getting sick, my family and I kind of knew that I had it. But for him, it was a little different because I don't think he had anyone in his family that, had kind of gone through it. So it was definitely a new situation for him. But like I wrote in the story, he didn't really experience probably his worst symptoms until he got to pro ball. Although when he was younger, when he was first diagnosed, that's when he was first experiencing it all.
And just kind of talk about what the recovery process was like for him, compared to what you went through in terms of, he's trying to come back and make it to the majors. And I think he is there now with the Rangers. But, he's trying to get back to becoming a pro athlete, not just trying to live, but trying to compete on a, ultra competitive level. What was that recovery process and then rehab process like for him?
That was interesting because that was one of the first questions I asked him, like, how different was this recovery process compared to, say, if you had, Tommy John or a knee injury or, something that you got hurt during a game or something like that. And he said, obviously it was different, going through the surgeries that a lot of people never have done this in baseball. But once he got back on the field and was throwing again, the rehab process was the same. He just said, once I was able to throw again, it was the same that if I had, Tommy John or, say that knee injury where, it was just, throwing to batters and kind of progressing off of, throwing bullpens and then eventually getting into the games, which he did in Frisco and a little bit at Round Rock. And now, like you said, he's back with the Rangers. He made his debut the first day in September when they expanded the rosters, and he was super pumped about getting into the game. He wasn't sure at first if that day he was going to be even active, but he was, and he was really thrilled about it.
Jake went one scoreless inning that day, one scoreless inning the next day against the Angels, and that culmination of all of the work to get back is impressive enough in itself, even more so based on the fact that there's a quote from Jake in the story where he said he really has been told that it could take up to a year for him to feel like everything inside of him is working as it's supposed to. So this hopefully continues to get better for him, but it also puts into perspective just how lengthy of a rehab process from the surgeries and from everything that goes into that really is for something like this.
Yeah, for sure. And when I was talking to him and Amanda, I talked to them Thursday, so it was right before he got called up to the bigs. And when they were talking about the story, it was, at first it was like, all right, we'll have to rehab. And then when they were kind of thinking about it, it's like, am I ever going to pitch again? So there was always that kind of doubt in his mind that, if something goes wrong or, he doesn't feel the same after surgery, that, this could, be the end. But once he comes back and he throws, a couple scoreless outings in the minors and then comes up and now, he had the 2 scoreless outings early on, he's, he's thrilled and it's gone well for him so far. So far, so good.
One of the other things that's really neat in this story is the impact that Jake has decided to try to make on other people suffering from the same things that he suffered from. And he tells a story of a kid who showed up to Globe Life Park that he had, really started to form kind of a friendship with. And he went with that young boy to his field day at school, and all of the kids there were supportive. They wanted to ask Jake questions. They wanted to know what it was like and all this kind of stuff. And that's big, especially because young people who realize that this is something that they're going to have to live with for their entire lives. It's kind of one of the things you noted. It's not easy in a whole lot of different ways other than just the physical aspects. So to be able to have an impact on that, he established the Gutted Out Foundation. What is now kind of the full scope now that it seems like Jake is back on track where he wants to be professionally? Now he can focus on that type of stuff as well.
Yeah, so he and Amanda are running that Gutted Out Foundation. It started a couple of years ago where they were selling the shirts that say Gutted Out, and over the last couple of years and now this past August, it evolved into this foundation where, they're raising money for either, research or, like he said in that quote, to send kids to camp. It's really kind of focused on, whatever is going to make people's lives easier that are suffering from this. And, so far they said they're working with the Players Philanthropy Fund with this. And so far they said so good that it's, working out well. And, they really want to spread awareness with it all. And, the story with the kid at Globe Life Park, I thought that was so great. How, this child, he had never shown his ostomy bag to anyone. It's definitely something that's super uncomfortable. And he meets Jake, and the first thing he asks him is like, hey, we're going to take a picture. Do you want to show it? And he's like, yeah, like no problem. and now it's, all over Instagram and Twitter. And it's great to see that his classmates were so supportive of it because, like we're just saying, it's definitely uncomfortable to live with. And especially for other kids that don't know about it, it's definitely, it's a weird thing. And to see everyone kind of rally around him, it was really a neat story.
Yeah, that was actually going to kind of get to what I was going to ask about in terms of, through your own personal story, through Diekman's story, through this Gutted Out, all that kind of stuff. Even going back to what you were saying with your brother, do you feel like there's more of a conversation going on? There's more education out there for something like this. It's not just kind of, a disease or whatever you want to call it that it operates in the shadows, that there's more discussion going on than there ever has been? Oh,
for sure. That was one of the big questions I asked the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation because they had worked with Jake this year and, past years at different events. And I asked them about, have you guys seen, personally more traction with, social media and just people, talking about it in general? And they were like, oh, yeah, for sure. It's definitely more, discussed, whether it's online or offline. And, I've in my experience, I felt totally the same way. When I was younger, it was kind of this thing that, it was there. And I was definitely uncomfortable talking about it with, my friends, classmates, teachers, whatever. And now it just seems that it's really big on social media. And a lot of the comments so far, people are just, really happy about that it's being discussed and it's out there. And Jake he's really he's run with this. And it's been something that he's obviously been open with. He posts something on Instagram or Twitter, it seems like, every day about it. And people are really, really thrilled about it, that, he's been so transparent through the whole process.
And if you want a little bit more on this story from Andrew's perspective, Andrew also wrote a blog post about his own personal experience that you can find on his Twitter account, which is at Andrew at BATT is the end of that handle. And Andrew, this is such a great story, man. I'm so glad that it got such good traction among people because it's a story that really deserves to be told, and you did a heck of a good job telling it. And thanks for coming on to talk about it with us, man. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I was, grateful that we were able to run it on our site. I didn't think it would be something that would ever be possible. And, to tell his story and kind of share my experience with it, it was, something that was really cool and unexpected.
It's awesome. And it's a great story. Go find it at milb.com. Andrew, thanks, man. We'll do it again, I'm sure, over the offseason at some point.
Yeah, would love to be back. And, you guys do a great job with the show. And I'll definitely be listening when you guys post every week.
Well, with the regular season behind us, postseason promotion, something that we kind of discussed last week. There aren't really a whole lot of them, so we're going to wrap up some regular season content with Benjamin Hill, your friend and mine from MILB.com. Hi, Ben. Are you excited to see me next week?
I didn't know I was going to see you next week, Tyler. That's some kind of wonderful.
No. And now we're not going to hang out. Just kidding, Ben. So so we're going to start things in Charleston. The Charleston River Dogs had a really cool story about Stevie Wintz, who is a 14-year-old bat boy for the Charleston River Dogs. Being a bat boy, not an easy gig. Tell us about Stevie Wintz with Charleston. Dude dances and he's energetic and he seems like a fun little ballpark character over there in Charleston.
Yeah. So as you can see, the season's over, but I'm still writing about my in-season road trips. Really winding down in terms of the MILB.com features. The blog will go on a little longer. But today, in which I'm speaking to this mic, that today is Wednesday. We had a story appear about Stevie Wintz, and just a simple little story. I just did a quick interview with him and got something up on the site. Hadn't written about a bat boy this year, but Stevie became known this season for dancing in between innings or during rain delays. And his dances were really funny because they weren't choreographed, so they were very interpretive and kind of strange. And when I was there, Charleston, a couple in action, and ended up talking to him after the game because, why not? I wanted to see how he became, such a good sir and, his path to being a bat boy. And he's a funny dude because, when you're dancing all the time and you have a reputation for that kind of zaniness, you'd expect maybe to be kind of a zany personality, but he was so serious and sincere throughout the interview. And, the quote that I lead off the story with is, if it's when I hear a funky beat, I just gotta get down. But he doesn't say it with a wink and a nod. He says it so seriously, like this is his mission in life. So I was like, I'm going to write about you, kid. And I did. So check it out on MILB.com. Stevie Wentz, the 14-year-old dancing bat boy with the Charleston River Dogs. And the River Dogs are in the playoffs. So
he gets some extra work.
There might be still a few opportunities to see Stevie in action. You know, school started. It's got to be difficult to balance 8th grade and postseason baseball, but I would hope that Stevie's up to the task, or I hope he's able to do that. But the season is still going on. We're in a very strange time. It's like the Twilight Zone. The season's ended. There's some playoffs. I'm still writing about in-season stuff. It's all very strange and surreal, but we're going to get through this together.
And how exactly do they find Stevie? I mean, what exactly do they do? How do you find a bat boy exactly? Is it just like who you think is going to fit in the position? Is it kind of just handed to friends of friends? How does that whole thing work?
Well, there's an industry standard. In Charleston, Stevie told me that he knew through whatever channels, he knew one of the front office members there who put in a good word for him, and he got hired. And it was as simple as that. I do think with bat boys, you do find a lot of, if not friends of a friend, but if you know someone with the team or you're kind of familiar with the organization, then you can get in that way. But, there's a lot of game day staff to hire, and bat boy is just one of those. And what a cool job. And, when I was a kid, I was a huge Phillies fan, and I would fantasize about being a Phillies bat boy as if it was the coolest thing in the world. It never even occurred to me that you could get that job in the minor leagues as well and probably have a lot better chance of doing it. So if I could go back and be a bat boy for sure, and I'd expand my horizons, just be on the Phillies and be a bat boy for whoever. So if I ever go back in time, check it out. I'm going to be a bat boy in the minor leagues.
That's going to be your choice, to be a bat boy in the minor leagues.
Yeah, of all
one of the
possible
timelines.
things. No, in all timelines, in every single timeline, I'm a bat boy. That's all I want to do. I can't think of anything else I'd really rather do.
Change about the past, so he would get some bat boy experience on his resume. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd kill Hiller too.
We'd have the baby Hitler debate.
Yeah, that's something we'll save for January podcast. How about that?
Well, Ben, we last week teased, and this week got a chance to finally read the kind of the origin story of one of the weirdest mascots in minor league baseball. The Wilmington Blue Rocks call a humanized celery stalk a mascot, which
I say anthropomorphic.
Let's put it that way. Celery stalk, which city of Wilmington has no real ties to celery. The name Blue Rocks has no ties to celery. But Mr. Celery has become legendary. He's now a couple of alternate logos for the Blue Rocks are Mr. Celery. And you got a chance to tell the background of Mr. Celery, which is like, this story will serve one day, I would imagine, as the first in an installment of superhero movies about Mr. Celery. But give us this origin story, this coming out party for Mr. Celery as he's 17, 18 years old.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the funner stories all year. Most fun. I don't know if funner is what we're going to go with it.
Debate was funner is a word, people.
All right. Tyler recently had the debate, so there we go. So way back at the very end of July when I was in Wilmington, as I think I mentioned last week on the podcast, it was a celebration the night I was there. And so throughout the evening, I interviewed longtime front office members and some ushers about Mr. Celery, their reaction to Mr. Celery, their memories of Mr. Celery, the origin story, of course. And I've never really written an MILB.com article like this. In which I did it kind of oral history style, because I had like 8 or 9 different people quoted. So instead of just endless quotes, he said this person, put it together oral history style, allowed the mystery to sort of deepen that way by people's conflicting accounts. So Mr. Celery's origin story, to the extent that anyone can really remember it, is at some point in the 90s, the team's concessionaire was Center Plate. And they brought a bunch of different food-related costumes down to the ballpark for some promotion they were involved with. And one of them was a celery costume. Who knows why or really what it was involved with, but it just got thrown in a storage closet. Then fast forward a few years, and the team's general manager at the time, Chris Kemple, he went to Lake Elsinore and saw the storm. And at that time, they had a probably for copyright reasons, it wasn't actually the Energizer Bunny, but the Lake Elsinore Storm had a pink bunny on the field. Chris Kemple, the Blue Rocks GM, said, you know what, that would be kind of cool if we had our own mascot who only appeared when we score. And somehow that and the fact that they had a Celery costume in the closet just became this thing where they did it as a one-off, and then it was a two forward to it. And it seems like a key point in the story was that shortly after Mr. Celery premiered at the ballpark, a group of University of Delaware college students called themselves the Celery Squad and came to every game with celery stalks and pots and pans and kind of turned him into a cult hero. And so that was in the early 2000s. And now you go to a Blue Rocks game, and like you said, Tyler, there's nothing connecting Wilmington, the city, or Blue Rocks specifically to Celery, but Mr. Celery is a huge part of their branding and overall identity. And so my story, to the extent I can, seeks to get to the bottom of that. So check it out on the website, milb.com, the official website of minor league baseball.
One thing you kind of get into is just like how they've kind of embraced it, and how does the kind of region embraced it, Mr. Celery?
Well, I mean, he's huge. I mean, it really is that when you go to a Blue Rocks game, you just expect to see Mr. Celery. And if you talk to someone who's been to a Blue Rocks game, next time you have a conversation and someone says, I've been to a Blue Rocks game, I bet you Mr. Celery is one of the first things that comes up. And I feel bad for Rocky Bluewinkle, the team's real mascot, who's really not as well known as Mr. Celery. Rocky Bluewinkle does all the work. He hustles around with the fans in the stands, goes to community appearances, and this vegetable who just appears out of nowhere when the team scores gets all the attention. So maybe what I want to do next is try to land an interview with Rocky Bluewinkle and see how he feels about playing second fiddle to an anthropomorphic piece of celery.
Do you ever think they like switch up who is Rocky Bluewinkle and who is Mr. Celery on a given night just to keep people's egos in check?
Well, I can't speak for Rocky, but definitely it's different people in the Celery costume throughout the year. And Andrew Lehman, the team's current GM, said it's interesting to see the different sort of interpretive dance moves and cheering that goes on depending on who is in the costume. But who are we kidding? There is no costume. There's just one man.
Right, yeah.
It's Mr. Celery. He lives in the ballpark, and he only appears when the team scores.
About Rocky Bluewinkle. He's like, Mr. Celery is like the do-nothing lead singer of a band, and Rocky Bluewinkle is like the guy who writes all the songs, and he's the one doing all the hard work, and Mr. Celery's just getting all the accolades. That's not fair.
It's not fair at all, and I wish I could come up with some really good analogies, and I'm just blanking right now, but Rocky Bluewinkle is to Mr. Celery as X is to X. Email me some good ones, please. Somebody. Benjamin.hill@mlb.com. Twitter @BensBiz. Instagram,
The Wilmington Blue Rocks, they did not rebrand. They redesigned a few years ago, back before the 2010 season, and they kind of went away from they had a logo that was an angry blue rock with a pickaxe, and they went to basically all mascot centered. Their primary logo is Rocky Bluewinkle. It's his head. Mr. Celery is an alternate logo. So that was kind of cool. It was like an identity for a team coming out of the identity that it created on the field and on game day, where you could have a team name and try to base your logos and your merchandise and stuff off of that. But it really came from the moose and the celery stalk and all that stuff. That became then the later on graphical and logo identity with the Blue Rocks, which is a pretty neat evolution of that franchise.
Yeah, nothing says minor league baseball like a moose, an angry rock, and a piece of celery.
Grandiose, by the way.
Where did the moose come from? Did I miss something?
His full name is Rocky Blue, which is a play on Rocky Bullwinkle. And so I guess that's really the only connection there.
So they went.
And Rocky Bull was a Rocky Bullwinkle was a moose and was a. An old cartoon character is a moose, and then it also has a Rocky in it, and they're the Blue Rocks. So you had this dual connect pop culture reference.
But like Rocky was the squirrel.
Right.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah, it was Rocky and Bullwinkle. Right. So we have.
So it's both of them together.
I do actually sort of have kind of an answer to this. Chris Creamer, who runs a fantastic website, sportslogos.net, does stories sometimes behind the identity of a team. And he actually has that very question. Why is the mascot of a team called the Blue Rocks a moose in the first place? And Chris Kemple is the one who addresses it and credits Frank Bolton, who was the team's owner and president in 1993. And he says, quote, "I don't know how he came up with Rocky Bluewinkle. I do remember him telling me it was after some bad Chinese food. I don't know if that's a joke or not." So apparently there's no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, and there's no reason for so much of minor league baseball and what goes on, and I think we're all pretty cool with that.
That's the most fitting part of it. Ben, any news on the postseason promotion front? We talked last week. Selling tickets in the postseason for minor league teams can sometimes be tough. Kids are back in school. You're not sure when your team is going to be playing games, all that kind of stuff. So postseason promos fly very much under the radar of what a front office is often trying to develop. But have you heard about playoffs and postseason promos that'll be going on across the country?
I have not heard much. No, I talked about this last week. Also, just in regards to end of the season and how the promotions aren't as necessarily strong as or memorable. And a point I neglected to mention last week is that so much of a team's game day staff are often college students, so they often leave.
That's a good
around before the last homestand, even let alone the playoffs. So you're really operationally speaking, kind of operating with a skeleton crew, and then you combine the postseason with school nights, colder weather, the unpredictability of when your game is actually going to be, depending on if you advance to the next round. And so it's really tough to do. I did see the River Dogs, Charleston River Dogs are giving away a shirt tonight, the Back to the Future style font that says Back to the Playoffs. Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs giving away a Trust the Prospects towel that plays off of the Philadelphia slogan, Trust the Process. And I don't know, that's about all I've seen recently.
I want to correct one thing as well. Paul Caputo is the author of that series at sportslogos.net. Chris Creamer runs the site. It's fantastic if you're a logo nerd. And to supplement your love of Benjamin Hill's work, you can check out some stuff there as well. Ben, what's coming up on the blog, bensbiz.mlblogs.com? You gave us a little taste, but obviously this stuff will go on long into the offseason, and you made such a concerted effort on staying on top of, you were just on a trip doing content from that trip, so it wasn't going into the offseason. So what doors does that open up for you in the offseason then?
Well, yeah, I'm going to finish up my in-season stuff right now. I'm on Frederick in that particular narrative, which is where I was in early August, and I hope by the end of the month to have all the in-season done. And, when the off-season really kicks in, then I'm going to deal with it. I don't know if any new doors are going to open. We're going to go into a new logo season. I'll do some guest posts. I'm always open for suggestions, too, and maybe taking deeper dives into little obscure tangents and having fun with things. So if there's something you'd like to see during the off-season, please get in touch. Whether it's something to talk about on the podcast or on the blog or on MILB.com, you really never know. There is a little more leeway. But I'll be doing some batting around columns that I've done in the last couple years, more of the quote-unquote hard business news. I'm reading a book right now on Lefty O'Doul, which I probably write up a review on that in the near future. I'm going to try to do an end-of-season crooked numbers, writing about oddities and whatnot. I started that column about 6 years ago and have sort of had it fall by the wayside as other things have taken its place, but I still always have a very soft spot in my heart for oddities, my whole lifelong obsession with oddities. So I'm going to write about some oddities as soon as I get the chance.
Is the next big thing on your calendar the promo seminar?
Yeah, in terms of hitting the road again, the promo seminar is in Greenville at the end of the month, the 26th to the 28th.
Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville with no E, not Greenville in the Appy League, correct?
Right. Greenville, South Carolina.
Home of the drive. And looking forward to that. It's always a good opportunity to catch up with people in the industry, and I'll do a presentation there that people always seem to love because I'm hilarious all the time. And so that'll be good. That's at the end of the month. So as I said, kind of Twilight Zone right now. Looking forward to an industry event, finishing things up on different fronts. The playoffs are still going on. So we'll take care of everything and then transition to the real off season in about a month or so.
He's Benjamin Hill. You can find him on Twitter. Ben's Biz is where he is there, and you can find him on the blog, bensbiz.mlblogs.com. And last thing, I guess since the regular season is over, we can sort of ask this question. I know we can't be provided any specifics, but have you gotten some waves made already on the rebranding season news? Do you know of teams that are coming up with that this year?
I've heard a few things off the record that I really can't divulge right now. Obviously one thing we're going to see is Fayetteville, who aren't going to play it's the Bowie's Creek Astros this season and next season. But we'll see a Fayetteville rebranding, I think, sooner than later. Gwinnett, we will also see.
Is Staten Island up again this year?
Staten Island might do it a second time. I'm not sure on the most recent developments with that, but they might try again this year. So those are a few that we know. I've heard a few rumblings elsewhere. And then there's some that, even if I try to keep my ear to the ground, I'll just be blindsided one day in like January or something. It'll be like, wait, what? So you really never know.
Who knows? The Lynchburg Hillcats could decide they're going to be the Lynchburg Hillcats again.
Yeah, they might change the name to the Hillcats for a third time. You never know. You never know in this crazy game we call life or minor league baseball.
Hold popular votes to keep the name the same. Thanks, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Tyler. You are a wonderful man.
See you next week. wrapping up another international edition of the Show Before the Show podcast. Thanks for tuning in wherever you found us. And before we get out of here, MILB.com is the spot for your minor league postseason coverage. And Sam, what are you watching on MILB.TV this week as we roll through the playoffs in the minor leagues?
Yeah, I know I got I was talking about the PCL playoffs before, so I'm going to switch to the IL playoffs here for MILB.TV, particularly Game 4 of a series between the Durham Bulls and the Indianapolis Indians. That's a best-of-5 series. There's a decent chance it might not even get to Game 4. It will require a 3-game sweep by either side. Feel pretty good that it's not going to be a 3-game sweep. Feel free to point me out if I'm wrong on that time. But right now, the Game 4 starters, the way things are lining up, for both teams is that the Durham Bulls will be starting Brent Honeywell, top Rays prospect, and the Indianapolis Indians will be starting Drew Hutchison, former big leaguer with the Blue Jays, has plenty of major league experience. So him getting a postseason start will be interesting. That would be interesting, regardless. The reason why I'm really going to be clued into this is, as some of you might know, Honeywell was actually suspended for 4 games by the Durham Bulls. For what, according to Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times, was disciplinary reasons. And, I don't know what those were. I can't speak to that. I don't have any inside information on that. But it has been very interesting to see Honeywell either like or retweet basically every call-up story that MILB sends out. I think he's somebody who's really been itching to get to the majors, and I've written this up. I think he's certainly worthy of a look. The Rays are usually, pretty laid back on bringing guys up. So,
and they're still in the mix in the American League, so looking for help, presumably.
Oh, for sure. And, as we saw in the Futures game, as we've seen in almost every start he's made this year, he has one of the most exciting package of pitches in baseball, not only just the minors. He came back from that suspension September 3rd through 5 1/3 scoreless innings. Doesn't seem like it's affecting him on the field anyway. For a guy who seems by, us, our whatever, 20,000 feet view, seems to be itching for a major league spot, a big postseason start against a former major leaguer. It's going to be on the road in Indianapolis. That's a big opportunity for him to show them, listen, if he can throw out 6 zeros in that game too, there really might not be much more else for him to prove unless the Bulls keep going and the Rays decide they prefer his arm there. So that's going to be a very, very interesting start for how he kind of responds to what seems like everything that's going on in that organization.
I'm going to go to AAA into the Pacific Coast League, and actually in 2 different series, the Colorado Springs Sky Sox and the Memphis Redbirds. One storyline that I'm excited to follow there, Tyler O'Neill, who longtime listeners of the podcast will not be surprised that I picked Tyler O'Neill here, but last year's Southern League MVP in his playoff race and playoff run through the postseason for the AA Jackson Generals. All he did over 7 games, a .448 average, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, a .515 on base percentage, and .828 slugging percentage for a 1343 OPS. So Tyler O'Neill does pretty well in the postseason. And also in the PCL, the Reno Aces already have the Pacific Coast League most valuable player in Christian Walker. They just announced that they have added the Southern League's most valuable player for the playoff push. Kevin Crone will join the Reno Aces for the playoffs. That was just announced earlier today. We're recording this on Wednesday. So Reno loading up for a run toward the PCL championship, and with it, maybe a shot at a AAA title if they can get all the way through the PCL as well. So some good stuff across the Pacific Coast League, which should be an entertaining couple of series to watch. So I think that's it. I'll be there on Monday, Sam.
Yeah, you will be. We did not make enough Canadian, A jokes, Class A advanced or something. EH.
No, but
obviously.
I am very excited about. I got a shirt from Baseball Canada, the governing body of amateur baseball in Canada and the national teams and stuff, and it says baseball, but the A has been replaced by an EH. And I saw it the first day that I was here, and I was like, "Well, I have to get that because if they sell out of that shirt, I'm gonna be furious." So,
well, I mean, if I can make a request, if you could bring back some poutine, I know you're going to be there for a while, and
that's true.
Poutine's probably good for a week, yeah. So if you order that now,
yeah, probably good. I think it probably heats up well too. It's just potatoes and gravy. It's probably good if you reheat it.
Yeah, I'm
fine.
sure I could find it here, but it's better if it comes from Thunder Bay.
It's got to be
Ontario.
authentic. Yeah, I know it's more of a Quebec thing, but I'm not going to Quebec, people. So lay off me. I get my poutine here.
Next week's podcast will just be me like eating through the poutine.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts on the postseason? Oh.
We'll just do a foods of baseball, of international baseball podcast. It'll be pretty good.
That would be awesome.
So tune into the minor league baseball postseason for the next couple of weeks at MILB.tv, and that will do it for this week's edition of the Show Before the Show podcast. In person next week, headed to New York City directly from Canada to meet my new nephew, so that's quite exciting. And I'll also see Sam, so doubly exciting. Very good.
I am not your new nephew.
No, you're not. Sam is not my nephew. That's true.
There's not been a legal proceeding that makes
we should
me
clarify. That is a very good point. He's Sam Dykstra. I'm Tyler Vaughn. We'll talk to you next week.